lesson 18, titled Ein No Ben Yomo and Devar Charif. It's really a continuation from last week. Not quite sure why they stuck in lesson 17. It doesn't really fit so well. I think this fits a little bit better in terms of the continuation. Just a reminder, next week is our last Sunday night Shiur. I don't know if you saw the email that I sent out the other night. We are starting a Thursday morning Shiur, starting not this Thursday because it's Shavuot, but the following Thursday. So those of you that have nothing that much to do in the morning. No, it won't be Kosher. It's going to be either we haven't decided. No, we haven't finished. We'll pick it up. Got to go another time. I just have to figure out when. Wait. I haven't. Thursday morning will be either Hilchot Brachot, Hilchot Shabbos. I haven't decided yet. Or Hilchot Tefillah. Yeah. Okay. So probably Hilchot Tefillah or Hilchot Brachot. We'll probably do that Thursday morning. Robert Chuchin and myself and Rabbi Kropkin are going to go into rotation. So that'll be Thursday morning from 10:15 to 11:15, starting next Thursday. And the Kosher Kitchen, the problem is that nights are going to become very difficult in June because, thank God, but there's something like 10 weddings and things going on in June. And the last week in June, I'm making a bar mitzvah, so it's going to be hard for me to. So we'll see what happens. There's like 26 or 27. So we'll have to next year, and you'll have to get it by watch them on Kosher Tube or something. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's not going to change. I could probably do them in July. I don't feel like I'm going to be around. Like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there's no point. So, yeah. Okay. So, lesson 18. This is a great. Oh wow, these cases are so common. It's not to be believed. So the case is. Let's read at the bottom of page 175. Excuse me. Here's the case. I'm preparing a delicious kumquat side dish. I have no idea what it is. Kumquat. I don't know what it is. Like a vegetable? Oh, I love those guys. They're delicious. Wait. No. They have like a stem and you put them in your mouth? Yeah. No, they're amazing. They're wonderful. No? I like them. Okay, fine. Whatever. That's okay. For a dish, for the bar mitzvah, in a meaty pot, which I haven't used for a number of weeks, i.e., Eino Ben Yomo. So we're boiling the fruit in this fleishik dish. It hasn't been used for a while. But I mistakenly used a milchik spoon to stir the food. So again, Eino Ben Yomo pot, parv food item, right? Parv food item, milchik spoon. This is the pot with the kumquat still inside, and this is the spoon I used to stir the hot food. And what's very important is I just used this spoon in a pot of hot milk chocolate this morning. So, i.e., the spoon is Ben Yomo. So, a Ben Yomo milchik spoon in an Eino Ben Yomo pot in a parv, with cooking up a parv food item. How is this going to play out? So let's go through this. So let's actually, if you skip to page 176 under T, under T for time. So remember the 3 T's: taste, temperature, and time. So this is very important in terms of time because we have here Ben Yomos getting mixed in with Eino Ben Yomos. So if you use a dairy spoon to stir a pot of meat. So remember, let's use this example. Right? Let's use a more difficult example. Right? We're not stirring now something which is parv in a fleishik pot. We're stirring 100% meat. You will need 60 is needed to negate the taste that comes from the spoon and goes into the pot. Meaning I look at my spoon as a piece of dairy, and I will need 60 times that volume of spoon in this piece of meat. I'm going to need shishim, right? Okay, that's obvious. We know that. However, if the spoon has been used for dairy in the last 24 hours, it is not going to harm the meat, right? An Eino Ben Yomo can never ruin your food. But what will it do to the spoon? In both cases, your spoon is toast, right? Remember our klal. Chazal wanted to help you with your food. They didn't care as much about your utensils. You can kosher utensils. Food, if it's not kosher, it's not kosher. You got to throw it out or sell it, or whatever the case may be. Right? If it's an Isser D'Oraisa Bas V'Chalav, you can't sell because you can't get Hana from it. So again, if it's a milchik spoon and a fleishik with meat, you need shishim. If you don't have shishim, your meat is toast. If you do have shishim, then you're okay. Your meat is okay. And if it's an Eino Ben Yomo spoon, your meat is also okay. Alright. So it only not be okay if you use the dairy spoon and like a tiny piece of meat. So that would be a problem, right? I mean, not even a tiny. You need 60, right? 60 is not so much for a spoon. If it's a heavy metal spoon, so 60 times the volume of that piece of the spoon, 60, think about it, 60, the whole spoon. The whole spoon, if it's metal, yeah. We're going to hold Chanan, we're going to hold that the entire, yeah, this is a very good question. We're going to look at the entire spoon, yeah. Because it's hot and we're stirring. And remember, the whole spoon is milchik, right? It's not like the tip of the spoon is milchik, the entire spoon is a dairy spoon. Okay, so... Oh, by the way, what's the rationale for the fact in Eino Ben Yomo? It's because the taste is called pagum, meaning the idea that an Eino Ben Yomo spoon or Eino Ben Yomo pot, it doesn't give off a good taste. Meaning a spoon which was just used with dairy will impart a wonderful, tasty dairy taste into the food, the pot, whatever. As opposed to a spoon which hasn't been used for 24 hours, even though it's dairy, the taste that will impart is pagum. It's not considered, it doesn't enhance the flavor, it's pagum. It's a disgusting flavor, and that's why it doesn't affect our meat at all. Okay, so here we go. Therefore, since the dairy taste and the spoon are considered unfit, the food in the pot remains kosher. However, top of 177. Although both the food and pot is kosher, the spoon is not. This is because it received the taste of meat and now has both meat and milk taste and cannot be used. Therefore, you must put the spoon in boiling water to kosher by Hagala. Okay, which is what I said before. One more thing we want to discuss here before we get into our case. Our case of using a milchik or meat utensil for par food. What happens if, let's say I used a spoon 2 days ago for dairy. So it's a milchik spoon which is not ben yomo. So 2 days ago I used it for dairy, and yesterday I used it for pasta. Meaning, but pasta is parv. So when we say something is eino ben yomo, does that mean it hasn't been used at all 24 hours? Or just not used for the dairy in 24 hours? Here's the difference. Because in theory, you could take a spoon, that's dairy, use it for hot chocolate, or just use it for pasta that afterwards you're going to add something dairy to, or not, or in a separate bowl or a separate dish. So that's an important question, right? Because meaning, the rationale might be that, as long as it's used the past 24 hours, maybe it'll bring out that dairy taste, even if you're using it for something part of it. So, what is the halacha? Halacha is, we only care about the dairy taste. Meaning, if I use a spoon for milchiks, and then I wait 24 hours and use it for parev, it doesn't reawaken the sleeping milchiks, so to speak, right? The sleeping milchiks is sleeping. The fact that it's used for parev doesn't wake it up. It's still embedded inside. And again, the logic there is because the dairy aspect of it hasn't been used for a while, and therefore it's a pagum taste. Okay? And therefore, yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go to the actual case that we started off with, and it's page 177. Here we go, in the middle. So we have a pot, which is eino ben yomo, and we have a spoon, which is a ben yomo. All right, we just used this morning for dairy hot chocolate. So how do we look at this situation? Therefore, second paragraph there. Therefore, the food in the pot is getting a secondary taste from the spoon. Remember last week's conversation? Nat bar nat. Nat is no tain ta'am. Bar is bain notain tam. So literally the son of a taste is giving to son of a taste, which is a secondary taste. Because remember what's going on here? You have, why is the food getting a secondary taste from the spoon? Just think about it. The spoon received dairy from the milk chocolate this morning. So milk chocolate goes into the spoon, that's one. The milk chocolate, which is embedded in the spoon, is now coming out to the meat. So that's called notain tam, bar notain tam. So what type of taste is going into this meat? Sorry, I apologize, not meat. It's not meat. It's a part of kamkwa. It's a part of dish, right? So in this part of dish is a notain tam, not bar not. And if it wasn't washed, then you're going to have actual milchiks. That won't be notain tam. That's going to be dairy, totally dairy. In which case, you're going to need shishim against that drop. Sure, it will. Of course it will. It's cold. Cold doesn't have. It's no problem. Yeah, it'd be considered a eino ben yomo. That's why specifically we use the case of hot chocolate this morning for breakfast, which we all could use because it's pretty cold this morning. And it's even colder now, even though it's summer, whatever. Okay, therefore, because of that, last week we learned that you're not allowed to eat this dish with meat. Why? We can't eat it with meat because a notain tam bar notain tam spoon came in contact with it. So here's a parv dish that cannot be eaten with fleishiks, because it has a secondary dairy taste inside of it. Doesn't make it milchiks, and it for sure can't be fleishiks because there's no meat. But it cannot be eaten with meat. Therefore, it is a kamkwa dish by itself because it cannot be served with meat. Now, if I were to ask you what type of dish should you put it on, dairy or meat, what would you say? So let's say you don't have the option for parv. Should you put this on a dairy plate or a fleishik plate? Why dairy? You get too confused. Why can't you put it on a fleishik plate? Cold fleishik plate? You can't eat it with fleishiks, so for this you shouldn't serve the fleishiks. Okay, so very good. So here we go. Bottom of 177. According to what you're telling me, I can assume that my kumquat side dish is kosher. What I understand so far is that since the meaty pot was eino ben yomo, it could not have caused any kosher fallout. But I still feel funny serving the food tonight. Is it from today? Okay. Turn to the top of the next page. That is exactly our case. Since the spoon, second line there, third line there, was a ben yomo, it makes more sense to eat the food on a milchik dish. Good job, everybody. Again, obviously you want to put it on a paper plate. That's obviously for sure going to be okay, right? But let's say you don't have that option. Better to put it on a milchik plate. In fact, you really should put it on a milk plate and not on a fleishik plate. Why? I think exactly what you all picked up. A food cooked in a utensil that absorbs the taste of meat, that dairy or meat, from within 24 hours is usher to eat lechatchila with the opposite food, according to the Ramah. And we learned, as we have learned, this is referred to in Hebrew by its acronym not bar not, which means the food's taste was imparted into the vessel which it is cooked in, and then was imparted a second time into the food that was cooked in the vessel the next time. However, under normal circumstances, one may place the food cooked in a milk or meat pot on the opposite utensil. However, there's a chumrah in our case that one should not serve the food as a secondary taste of dairy on meaty utensils. Therefore, it should be done on milchik utensils. I'll say another reason for it. If it's on a milchik utensil, you're much less likely to eat it with meat, because there's a siman that is if it's your dishes. Okay. So go down to the reason, the bottom of that page. I kind of alluded to it already. The reason why it's forbidden to put the food into the same kind of vessels as the vessel was cooked in, i.e. meat, that has been used for 24 hours, because if we permit using the same vessel as the not from today's vessel, i.e. meat, in our case, we may think the vessels used within 24 hours do not become forbidden even when used the opposite kind of food. Refraining from using the same vessel as a vessel that was not used in 24 hours serves as a reminder. So So the fact that I'm going to be serving this on milchik plate will serve as a reminder that what I did is not appropriate, is definitely not l'chatchila, and cannot be eaten with fleishiks. Therefore, I should put it on a milchik plate. It should serve as a reminder. The Gra says that there's a chumrah in both outcomes, and they are the following. One, the food should be eaten with the same dishes as the spoon that was used. Okay, we said that, dairy. And two, the pot that was not used within 24 hours should be koshered. So you should really kosher that fleishik pot. So the milchik spoon, for sure you got to kosher. But even the fleishik pot should be kosher. Okay, next. Let's turn the page over. You'll see why. It's just talking and schmoozing. Here's our next case. Oh my goodness, this is so common. It is unbelievable how common this is. So the first part we're all familiar with. That'll go quickly, and then we'll get to the real questions about what happens to the blades and the processor, and that's really famous. So let's start off with a case. Here we go. Onions, as we're all familiar with, or any type of spicy food, draws taste, blios, out from one utensil more than any other food. They are called a davar charif. They're sharp food. They're considered hot foods even when they are cold. So, as we know, a cold onion goes against what we say. Usually you need heat in order to transfer something. By a davar charif, that is not the case. In some ways, their power to draw the flavor is even greater than hot food. There are three chumras by a davar charif. One, a davar charif, the sharpness together with the pressure of the knife. In Hebrew, it's called the duchta de sakina, like a duchak. It's like the pressure of the knife will draw the taste of the knife and transfer into the sharp food. Therefore, if an onion is cut with a dairy knife, we don't treat the onion as dairy. Meaning, generally speaking, if I have a cold dairy knife and I'm cutting a cold potato, no one will ever say that my potato now is milchik. But the difference is, even though it's a cold onion, we look at it as if it's a hot onion, and therefore, if I have to cut hot onion with a fleishik knot, with a milchik knife, it render it milchik. So that a davar charif creates a fictitious heat. Because the pressure of a knife. But here's what's very important. It's the pressure of the knife that creates that fictitious heat. It doesn't exist as the heat on its own is insufficient, right? It's the pressure of the knife that brings out that heat. It's not like a natural state of heat. Two, the principle of nat bar nat does not apply. For example, if a sharp part of food is cooked in a dairy pot, so I throw onions in a milchik kli, it is now considered to be cooked with actual dairy. Milchik onions, part of onions, in a dairy pot, we consider those onions to be totally milchik, and not notin tam or notin tam, i.e. dairy into the pot and pot into the item. It's as if there's dairy in the onions. Three, even if the utensil was eino ben yomo, even if this frying pan has not been used in 48 hours, the taste that comes out of the utensil and refreshed and have the same din as the utensil was a ben yomo. So this is why things are more complicated, because you have three things that usually can save you, don't save you when it comes to davar charif. Meaning, heat is irrelevant, is imaginary heat. It's not considered nat bar nat. It's already, by just putting onions in a dairy pot, they become milchik. And even if you haven't used your dairy pot in a week, it's as if it's a ben yomo pot. Okay? So again, it's the pressure of the knife or the cooking. Right? Meaning, so either create a fictitious heat, but once I have real heat, then the properties almost like jump up a stage. So it's almost as if it's like a double heat. Like the pressure of the knife creates a fictitious heat, and if I have real heat, then it's as if it's a ben yomo it's as if it's mamish milchak, even though it should be no tain tam by no tain tam. It's like it does like it's like a steroids. It's like a. Okay. Therefore, using, for example, if the onion is cut with a meaty knife that wasn't used in the last 24 hours, we say that the taste of the knife goes into the onion and becomes strengthened back to the original fresh taste. So even if you use an Eno Ben Yomo knife, it doesn't matter. Your onion is still fleshik or milchik. Therefore, using a dairy or meaty knife, because onions can lead to major problems in the kitchen. Let's turn, because we're just talking about the case. Here we go. Onions cut, top of 181. Onions cut. Now we should finish this. With a meaty knife and then cooked with milk. So I take onions, cold, not that it'll matter, with a meat knife, ben yomo or ben yomo, doesn't matter, and I cook them in with milchik. According to the shach and the taz, even if the onions were cut with a meaty knife and boiled with milk, the onions are permitted as long as they're 60 against the meaty taste in the onion. Okay, so he says here the onions are permitted. Meaning, so I boil milk. I don't know why. I guess boil milk with onions. Is that like? It sounds gross. Boiled milk. Did you do that? No. Why would you do that for? But I don't know. Let's say you do that. It's a.
Like a milk soup, like a creamy.
But you have other things in there. Like you never would have just regular. So in this case, it won't really matter so much.
Why does it matter?
Yeah. It won't really matter so much. I'm not going to become milchik, right? So that's not going to matter. All right. So again, we have a situation where onions are cut with a fleshik knife, and we're boiling it in a dairy pot. Here we go. As long as there's 60 against the meaty taste in the onion. In this case, that would be 60 against the knife, since the taste of the knife went into the onion. So again, here's my knife. It's yay big. So that is going inside the onion. Now again, if the onion's going to be diced into small pieces, it's not going to really matter. We're just talking about big. Let's say you have like a full onion. You just cut that onion down the middle. Because if you have small pieces of onion, each small piece of onion, the entire onion is going to be affected, right? Because of the size of the knife. Let's just so I don't have that. So I have a bigger onion, and I cut the big onion in half. In which case, it's not maybe the entire onion. Maybe it could just be that area, right? That's what he's saying here. So as long as there's 60 against the meaty taste in the onion, if you'd have that, then you'd be okay. In this case, that would be 60 against the knife, since the taste of the knife went to the onion. The Chavis Das explains that the reason the onions do not become prohibited is because the meaty taste will eventually be extracted from the food during cooking, and is therefore considered a weak taste since they're not inextricably part of the onion. Meaning that the taste that goes into the onion isn't your classic regular meat taste. It's almost like a weakened meat taste. Therefore, by cooking it in this dairy, I guess, soup or dairy liquid, there's not going to be that much. You don't have to measure it against all the entire onion, but just, let's say, the surface area of the knife, the blios, that went into the onion, which potentially could be less.
Have you ever tried to do that?
So what you'd have to say, if I have an onion, so again, if an onion is going to be diced into a million pieces, it's not going to matter. But if I have an onion which is this big, and all I'm doing is cutting it in half, so again, how much of my knife is actually going to be going into here? It's going to be much less than my entire onion, won't it? So, I guess it's the slice down the middle. This area over here, 60 of that. So again, a lot of it will be, if I have only this much, how much is this? 500 milliliters of milk, that's probably going to be enough, right? Against this one cut in an onion. Also, how many onions you have, right? Or just one onion, maybe a difference if I have, 50 onions or 100 onions. So that's the pot. However, Rabbi Akiva Eger says that 60 is needed against the entire onion. So if I have, let's say, I used our case before, I have one onion, it's yay big. It's not just the volume of the knife that would go, but it's the entire, I need 60 times the volume of this onion. That's going to be a lot more than whatever this part of the knife just went into the middle of the onion. It's a big difference. According to Rabbi Kiva Eger. Onion mixed with the dairy taste of that onion that is received in the knife of the onion become chanan, meaning that the entire onion is chanan is chaticha nasa nevela, that the entire piece becomes an item of treif, not just the area, but the entire onion. The entire onion is a non-kosher onion because the entire onion has now become meat and been cooked with dairy, and therefore you need 60 times that onion in order to nullify it. Even if there is an amount of food, 60 times the amount of the size of the onion, and therefore the soup is forbidden unless onion themselves remain forbidden, and you actually have to ladle out the onions. So here we're not talking about dicing onions. You actually have a full onion that you could see in full onions. You know, like in your chicken soup. I think often we do that in chicken soup. We don't want to dice up onions in chicken soup. You take an onion, you gently cut it in half, maybe the quarters from the size of the onion, when you put it in your soup. So in such a case, let's just reverse it with dairy. You'd have to take your onion and spoon it out. Most cases, let's say you had one onion to a chicken soup. Let's say you cut your onions. Good, but this is a good example. Sometimes you flip around. If they would have flipped around the case, it's much easier to do, right? You take an onion, you cut it with a dairy knife, and you put it into your chicken soup. That's the easiest. To me, that's a much easier case and more practical case than cutting an onion for fleshik, putting it into milk. But it's the exact same thing, just reversed. So again, 60 times the entire onion. You have a big thing of chicken soup, you're going to have 60 times. For sure, you're going to have 60 times if it's just spliced according to the shach and the taz. But if it's a much smaller pot, or if you have a lot of onions, you have 5 onions in a small pot of chicken soup, and you hold like Rabbi Kiva Eger, you're going to be in trouble. So, okay, we'll see what the halacha is. As you mentioned, shach and taz both permit the food cooking in the pot with just 60 against the taste absorbed inside the onion. However, the majority of the commentators hold the onions themselves are intrinsically forbidden, and you're going to need 60 the entire onion, and that is generally the halacha. We're going to hold like Rabbi Kiva Eger and look at the entire onion as a chanan chaticha nasa levela, and you need 60 times that onion in the soup or in this dairy thingy. Okay. However, and this is a good kula, for those authorities who hold that onions are not considered to be sharp enough to rejuvenate taste when cutting with a knife that was not 24 hours, believe it or not. Because batzal isn't batzal. It's very possible that when the Shulchan Aruch used the word batzal, it doesn't mean we have onions. There are different types of onions. And not all onions are created equally. Radishes, though, everyone will agree, and let's face it, you can't compare an onion to a radish in terms of its potency. Right? What others really, for sure, radishes are a problem. Something else which is a problem. Especially cooked onions, by the way. We're talking about cooked onions here. You cannot compare. Oh, no, I guess when you cut it, it'll be raw, right? Yeah, no, when you cut it, it'll be raw. What would be considered a davar charif besides radishes? Pickles are a machlokas. We could be leaning by pickles too. Yeah. What? Garlic. Thank you. Garlic. You said garlic? Yeah, garlic. Garlic's a good one. Garlic's a good davar charif. Those are like the classic garlic. Yeah. Okay. There are somewhat lenient in certain. So, there is a kula that you can use that shouldn't have to, but if you need to, if you use the following: if you use a knife that was eno binyomo, and you're using to cut an onion, you could say that in such a case, if you're in an emergency situation, you could argue, well, it's eno binyomo, maybe onion is not really davar charif. Then I can hold like the shach and the taz, not like Rabbi Kiva Eger, and only hold 60 times the amount that was imparted into onion, and not the entire onion itself. So that would be, let's say, under certain circumstances, you can rely on that. B'diavad, obviously, that's a given. Because I'm combining up maybe the halachas of the shach and the taz, maybe the onion isn't the davar charif, the knife itself isn't eno binyomo, and therefore we can tag up those things together to find a leniency in certain situations. You can never, ever intentionally do that. That's for sure. Okay, what happens to our food processor? Go all the way down to 182, please, at the bottom. What are we going to do about our food processor? Okay. Here we go. Let's read this. I have one more question. Some of these onions that were cut with a dairy knife were used in my food processor to make the potato go. I've always treated my food processor as part. This is a very practical case. So again, I take a knife, that's dairy. I cut my dairy knife with... No. I take a dairy knife and I cut an onion with my dairy milchik knife. I then take an onion that was cut with my dairy knife and I throw that into my food processor. I then process my onions and I want to use it for fleshik kugel, or a kugel that will be served fleshiks. Or, more importantly, have I now made my food processor milchik? That is a very serious question. And of course, vice versa, have I made my food processor fleshik, right? Should I use the fleshik knife? Okay. So here we go. In order to appreciate this, there's another machlokes that we need to understand, and it's in the bottom of page 182. There's another machlokes among the commentators, the Mefarshei Shulchan Aruch. Again, Avram holds that just as we said, the onion will pull out the taste, so the onion remain a first-degree taste to the onion, or any sharp food, or transfer full taste into the utensil, i.e., we look at this onion as a real piece of milchiks. So again, the knife that I used of dairy goes into this dairy onion. This onion is as if it's mamish dairy, and I'm putting this dairy onion, it's as if I'm putting milchiks inside my food processor that will go onto the blades, and now my blades have to be treated like fleshiks. On the other hand, the Even HaOzer holds, whoa, time out, that sharp foods will only take all the taste out of a knife, but they will not transfer all its taste into a knife. Meaning, I understand that when we machmir, that if I take a knife and chop up an onion, my onion will become milchik. But then to say that this is a mamish milchik onion that will go into ultimately a cold food processor. Yes, it might have spinning blades, but again, that's like treating it as a mamish piece of milchik, of dairy, hot, right? Because if it's cold, it still remains parv, right? Imagine it was a potato, right? Imagine it was it's all cold. That already is like too far-fetched. So treat.
Still the knife drawing out the heat of the onion.
But what he's saying is that.
Like how is that different from a knife cut?
Because it's a parv knife, meaning when I put it in the food processor, the blades, right? Those blades in the food processor are still parv. So you're going to tell me it's as if the blades of the food processor are cutting up a piece of milchiks, or like swirling around hot cheese. Because remember, if it would be cold cheese, it would be okay, no? Right? If you cold dairy, there's no heat. So that already, he says, is too much. Meaning, you don't like continue this piece of dairy onion for the next stages. Right? At some point in time, it becomes diluted, so to speak. And that's what the Even HaOzer says. That the sharp foods will only take the taste of a knife, but won't transfer. Hear the difference? It doesn't transfer it into the knife. Meaning, the knife will go into it, but it doesn't become a strong enough entity that it could impart its milchiks onto other things. Right? Meaning that are utensils. Other foods, maybe. I mean, if I were to cook this onion with other foods, it becomes milchik. But it doesn't have an ability to then take itself and put itself into that knife, into those blades that are in this food processor. So this is where we basically say, I would say most cases, if you have a food processor, most food processor blades are expensive, right? Are they cheap, food processor blades? They're not so cheap. So if it's something that can be rectified easily or quickly, so then I guess you can do it. But generally speaking, we'll not hold like we're not going to hold like the Magen Avram, and you can rely on the Even HaOzer and be lenient when it comes to, and this is general practice, you hear this all the time. I for sure remember in the last 5 years, for sure once a year I get this question comes up. So if it happens to me once a year, it happens to a lot of people a lot more than once a year, where people get confused, and you can rely on this Even HaOzer and say, don't worry. It's, generally speaking, the reason is because they're like 3 steps already into their cooking and they realize what happened. And you don't need to check out your for sure you got to do it on purpose. That's for sure. That we're talking. All these cases are b'diavad. You should never do it on purpose. You should get parv knives to cut your onions. You should get, to make sure that everything's taken care of for Devar Chariv. We treat onions like Devar Chariv l'chatchila, right? There's no question. All these areas, you do have to be careful. And that's why some people don't even like putting, cut Devar Chariv back in the fridge, because then you forget, what is this? Is this fleishik? Is it milchik? You don't even know. At the end of the day, half an onion, a quarter of an onion, just throw in the garbage, like a for sure piece of garlic, which is not worth keeping around. So, what? Right, the problem is the plastic knife doesn't cut onions so well. Doesn't cut well. Yes, right. It doesn't cut enough. You never used to dice using a plastic, but you could use a plastic knife, right? Just to cut it in half. Yeah. Yeah. You could use those like cheap plastic knives. Those like. Really? Okay. You start crying or something. Yeah. Sometimes I find if you cut it quickly and you quickly put it in the cholent. The only time I really cut onions ever is to make a cholent. So I've discovered that if you cut it really quickly take the onion, put it in the cholent pot and cover the cholent pot, usually I'm okay with that. So, anyways, the experience of a cholent maker. All right, so we're going to end there for tonight.